Hi, this is Kevin Godby, and I'm from Kingston Happenings, and I'm here with Riley John Donnell, otherwise known as Uncle Riley. And we're here to rock some optimism. And Rocking Optimism is a project that Uncle Riley has started here in Kingston, and we're here to talk a little bit about it and where it's going.
Cool.
So tell us about it, Riley. I mean, where do you see? How do you see this really taking off?
Well, I mean, it's conceived as a space for dialogue. So the idea behind it, in Rocking Optimism, is that they are rocking chairs that are donated by the community, and then we paint them yellow, a special color of yellow that we call International Optimism Yellow, or Into Yellow. I can explain that in a minute. And then we take those chairs and we put them in pairs and we gift them to different porches of Midtown. And part of that is to create a space where people can have conversations, positive dialogue, where they share their ideas for how to make Midtown a brighter place. This is really about kind of giving a time and a place for people to have a dialogue, and then also a place for that dialogue to be heard. So that's why we've been partnering with community organizations and also with Kingston Happening, that if you hashtag your conversation and you want to share it, then it has a platform and a virtual space for it to live where people can hear that dialogue and those voices and conversations can be heard. It's part of a series of art projects we've been doing in Midtown to brighten the neighborhood, create dialogue, and what we like to coin as it's a way for us to put optimism into action rather than just kind of talking about it on just at City Hall and just in theory. How do we actually put some of these ideas into action?
Right, and it seems like a great way to get people to relax and just kind of open up and talk very casually about things when, a lot of times these kind of discussions get to be fairly, emotionally charged, that sort of stuff. So it's a great way to settle down and just have a conversation about things.
Kind of amazing what happens if you just rock.
That's
So
right.
we've noticed as we kind of tested it out how people just seem to avoid arguing when they're chilling and rocking together.
Right.
And we, when I say tested it out, the mayor sat in one of the chairs and just had conversations with people. Came up and sat actually at City Hall first, where they could ask any questions or have a dialogue about any topic. It wasn't in the kind of heated political space. It was
Right.
more about a conversation, dialogue. So then putting it out on the streets, we've had a handful of dialogues with different people, and also just saw what happened when people sat down and had them on their own. Rosendale had it at a street fair where nursing moms could just sit and use them during a street festival and engage in dialogue. And again, the real end goal though is that we have a critical mass where our goal is to have 40 chairs, and pair them up in groups of total 20 pairs, and then gift them to Midtown so that this can be really about a space to have a conversation about Midtown, the problems, but also the possibilities and solutions.
Right. I think the problems are usually pretty well known a lot of times, but the solutions are what are pretty elusive. And I know I'm a firm believer in the power of teams. And when you get people to talk, and put things out on the table, you have a lot broader perspective on ways to address, different situations. And
couldn't agree more. One of the organizations that I created to help support these projects is called You, Me, We. You, Me, We. And the premise is collaboration. So all the projects that You, Me, We does, it starts with a positive intention, but it can't really come to be unless different organizations participate in making it happen. So this Rocking Optimism project actually is a collaboration with multiple organizations and multiple individuals. So You, Me, We, Midtown Rising, Herzog's, Kingston Happenings, Chronogram was even involved, Repco. There's been a handful of organizations getting involved.
And with your experience with You, Me, We, can you give some examples of kind of projects that have come out of those and improvements?
Sure, yeah. Some are on a larger scale. which includes working with International Day of Happiness, which is a UN-sanctioned holiday, March 20th. So we've done projects with like Pharrell Williams lit up the Empire State Building, and then on March 20th, and then also Coit Tower lit up yellow. And our premise with the yellow, International Optimism Yellow, is to shine a light on depression, but also create this kind of color that if people and communities want to participate and say, hey, we're doing something positive, we're brightening a neighborhood, or we're talking about mental health, they can do projects with this color. Mm-hmm. So one as an example is International Day of Happiness. Also, we've done projects called Paint the Town Yellow. So in Madison, New Jersey, the Borough Association and the Mayor's Office came together and raised funds to paint Main Street yellow through banners down the street. It launched on March 20th, International Day of Happiness last year, 2016, and then, this year, 2017, and then went through May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. So there were banners down the street saying, paint the town yellow. On March 20th, if you wore yellow, all the businesses gave you discounts. Whole Foods even gave you discounts for your purchases if you wanted. There were yoga classes, there were speaking engagements, and then through May, it was about 50 to 60 artists created works using International Optimism Yellow, the color, painted works, and then different businesses adopted them and put them in their storefronts, and then if the piece is sold, 50% went to the artist who made it, and then 25% went to a local mental health charity, and then 25% went to UMIWE, so we could keep gifting the paint. So that's kind of some larger things, and then my backyard is Kingston, and Midtown Kingston in particular. I felt like this is where we could really show what if we use this color as a way to do community development projects and art projects, so that we worked with communities, local government, local organizations who have a shared intention of trying to make a positive impact. What if we did projects with the color? Mm-hmm. So in Kingston, we started with a space called the Poptimism Shop, which we actually now call the Happy Spot.
That's right.
We do community.
Right where we're at now.
It's a community think tank space and project space where people want to work on a physical project. They call it a Happy Spot using this yellow color, and then we do these projects. So the first one was 100 students at Kingston High School doing a project called Pollination Happy Spot. 100 different yellow flowers were painted, and then on the back, the students wrote their ideas for how to make Midtown a brighter place. And they were phenomenal ideas. Those 100 flowers were placed around the community, starting at City Hall,
right.
And then they've moved around the neighborhood, and they've been at community gardens, they've been at events, and the end goal is that they will be down either Van Buren Street or one of the other streets to kind of brighten that neighborhood during winter months. Mm-hmm. From that project, one of the things that the majority of students said they felt like Midtown needed more color or more art. So one of the projects we did, or more events to do. So the next project that came out of that was called Peace Officers, and that was done with the Kingston Police Department. And different officers came, donated their time, and in front of a yellow background, they made peace doves. Mm-hmm. And then in slow motion, they flapped peace doves. And then in between those doves were their ideas how to make Midtown a brighter place. And that was a video project that we project at night onto an older building in Midtown. And from that, one of the police, actually Chief Tinte, had an idea saying, felt like we needed more communal places to eat with neighbors, to meet neighbors and have conversations. So we did a project called the People's Picnic, which are 10 yellow picnic tables that are placed in Broadway Commons. And that's really meant to give access to Broadway Commons. It was this kind of space that the community couldn't really use. Mm-hmm. So now they can have picnics whenever they want, but then also once a month we collaborate with community organizations in Midtown Rising to throw a free picnic where the different vendors in Midtown, different stores, restaurants, either donate or we purchase food from them, and we feed the community, and there's music and art, and it's a way for people to get to engage and meet their neighbors.
And those have been very successful, and I've been to a number of them already. And it's great to see the mix of people that come there and see people actually interacting in a very laid-back environment. And that people keep doing those in some way, shape, or form. The other thing is, I mean, you mentioned the project with the disc that you got the high school students involved in. Anytime you can get 100 kids involved in anything, that's a huge accomplishment. And I think it's a good indicator of the kind of traction that these kind of projects can have. Just sort of low key, but integrated in the neighborhoods, and sort of on the streets, grassroots, whatever you want to call it. But I think that's really kind of the missing link, these days in terms of reaching out to people, is really being on the street.
Well, you tapped on something earlier, saying I think we all know there's a lot of problems in Midtown, but some of those are assumed. Some of those some people are looking from the outside in, just saying, this is what we think the problems are, but that's where we're really talking about an equitable development. We're talking about how do we avoid the big G word of gentrification. And you also look at Kingston being, I think, representative of a lot of places in America right now. How do we actually engage with community to hear what they think the problems are versus anybody assuming, and also have a place where you hear the voice of what the ideas are, or the solutions could be, and how do you maybe even activate those solutions so that it feels like it's from the community rather than someone kind of saying, oh, this is for your community. So that's the premise, like with the 100 high school students, the idea for the next project came from them. So even though I'm an artist working with the color, I'm just kind of elevating other people's projects.
I've noticed in a lot of situations in my past where you look at problems, and a lot of times the solution is this very big, ominous thing that people don't know how to deal with. But when you start dealing with people at a much lower level, whether, in my environment, dealing with technical people, or in this environment, talking with people that are actually living in the neighborhood that really understand the problems, you find out there's a lot of solutions that are low-hanging fruit that you can do and make progress. It doesn't solve the big problem necessarily, but they still are a way of showing progress. And the important thing in a lot of projects is to develop trust and make sure that everybody's kind of getting on board and understanding, what the problems are, and people realize who's there to help and, who's not, necessarily there to help. And that sort of thing. So it's a real important thing to focus at some level, have some sort of interaction going on.
I think it's that human interaction that solves a lot of assumptions, opens the dialogue, and then also just, I think there's very few places where we have a safe place to actually have the positive dialogue.
Right.
Not just amongst your circle, but with other people that you might not necessarily agree with.
Right.
And that's how we actually reach across divides. It's not just by kind of tolerating, it's by really listening to each other and engaging in it and putting down the prejudice, putting down the assumptions, and just being present. And I think that can be really difficult in a city hall environment. Whereas in community spaces and our porches and our front rooms and our backyards, if we can figure out ways to invite people to have those dialogues, that's where I think the real opportunity for transformation can happen.
Right. And our intent is to have more of those dialogues, having some more here. I'll be having some people coming in. We'll be doing more interviews like this on different topics, and also just getting out in the street and allowing people to start to do their own. Let them have their own conversations. Let them videotape themselves. Like I said, I can pull that all together on the Kingston Happenings website, and people will be able to see, what people are talking about and what the issues are from a little bit different perspective.
Well, that totally excites me because really the premise of this is how do you empower people's voices that want to share their point of view, and how do you create something that is a place for people to participate versus just kind of patting people on the head and saying, yeah, we checked off getting community approval on an idea we have. How do we actually hear those ideas and have a place for it?
Right.
And I think Kingston Happenings is a perfect example of something that can really be a community pool. And You've done such amazing work with it. I'm always amazed to see how many people say, like, hey, Kingston Happening is really how we can kind of find out what's going on in the city. And I love that you're kind of bringing this idea of how do we also bring in the community voice into Kingston Happening. And can't wait to see what emerges from this and from your treatment of it.
Me too, because all this stuff's an experiment. You never know what takes off and what doesn't take off. But I'm very flexible in that I can try to do a lot of different things and see what happens. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of response we get. It's always a problem, and it comes up in a lot of conversations that I get into with a lot of different people at levels, many different levels. It's just fundamental communications channels and trying to figure out what works. And there's no one answer. There's no silver bullets for it. All you need to do is start doing this, and then everybody will know what's going on, and everybody will be happy and going their merry way. So we just have to keep experimenting, keep trying with different things to reach out to people with different ideas.
Well, we're hoping, even the simplest concept still takes communication. So hoping that in the future when people see these yellow projects around Kingston, there is a trust. That you can see that it's not one person's point of view or one person's project, but it's a community conceived and executed project. So that trust, you see a place that you can trust. You see a project you can trust.
Right.
And hopefully that also creates a certain amount of responsibility with people who come across it and know what to do with it. So that the conversations that can happen here aren't just bitch sessions about what's wrong.
Right.
Because that's not going to change the world.
No.
It's just adding more negativity. So I'm hoping that however this comes into play through this learning curve, sit down, ask someone to join you and say, hey, let's rock optimism and talk about something that could be a solution for some of the problems that are ailing us.
And I hope we can get some kids involved. We're sitting here watching people go by the door here. A lot of kids getting out from the high school and walking home. It would be really great to start to get more input directly from them and see what's on their mind, see what we can do to really get kids more engaged in community projects.
It's pretty amazing to me that once we do projects out on the street, I think Broadway corridor has for a long time not been considered a walking district, and now it's really emerging as there's all this stuff happening here. Once you put any project on the street, I've noticed, as well as the pop-up gallery group and the draw group, the Department of Regional Art Workers, as soon as we put something out on the street, whether it be seating or some kind of activity or art project, people are drawn right away.
Right.
There's just this, it's an opportunity, there's something going on. So I have a feeling, the hunch tells me from what we've gathered so far that this could be an entryway into other similar projects.
Well, I think about this time of the day, maybe sometime other time this week, we put the chairs out in front of this building and see if we can corral a few of these guys walking, some of these kids walking by and say, hey.
Yeah, it's worked so far. If we just sat out there and
Yeah.
put the chairs, it's been cool.
Yeah.
Who knows what it would translate to people wanting to actually share those dialogues, but hopefully it will.
Great. Well, thanks a lot for tuning in, folks. I hope you have some idea now what Rocking Optimism is all about. And if you see the yellow chairs around, feel free to drop in and start a conversation with whoever's around. Thanks again.